Hello there, welcome to The Comments, a collaborative project by Espreso.Global and Ukrainian media. I'm Olena Solodovnikova, and it's a great pleasure for me to be joined by Iliya Kusa, analyst and the expert of the Middle East affairs. I suggest to talk about Iran as one of the ambiguous political players. And let's start, of course, with the mysterious death of country's president. What are the versions of the helicopter crash with President Raisi? Why did it happen? What are the results of Iran's internal investigation?
The main version is that bad weather caused the crash. And this is precisely what the internal investigation found and what they published in their final conclusion, that bad weather and mistakes made by the pilot caused the crash. And so it seems that the Iranian authorities will not and are not going to pursue any other alternative versions. So this is what they are going to stick to, I think, like as final version of what happened.
But there were a lot of another variants why that was organized by another countries, another else. Could you elaborate on that?
There were many speculations, mostly due to the high level of the event, because when the president of any country dies under such events, especially we're talking about Iran, which is a closed political system. Of course, there are many speculations about why it happened, or whether or not this was just a tragic happenings or something else. There were versions about involvement of foreign powers like Israel, Azerbaijan, the United States, etc. There were versions regarding an internal struggle, power struggle between Ibrahim Raisi and his competitors inside Iran. None of these versions were supported by any information or evidence, or even, indirect evidence. So as of now, it is really hard to say whether any of these versions can be proved. And as we saw, the Iranian authorities decided not to pursue any of these versions, because this is what some of the international observers expected them to do, that they will blame Israel, for example, and say this was some kind of sabotage on board. But no, they decided to stick to the version about bad weather. I would say that I don't want to speculate too much about this as well, because really there is nothing to talk about as of now because of little information we have. But if one to think about any alternative version of what happened, I would say it is unlikely that this was somehow kind of foreign foul play. I think it had, if not bad weather, then most likely it can be connected to some kind of internal power struggle inside Iran. So this is something that I would prefer to believe to, if not for bad weather. But currently, I think that this was just, a tragic occurrence that we saw. And that's all. So basically, I don't think there is something more to that, at least not for now. Maybe in future we will know something more or not. I don't know.
Many countries, including Polish President Duda, expressed condolences to Iran. Personally, me was very surprised about that. He compared it to the plane crash with President Kaczynski had died. Why such a diplomatic step was so significant for President Duda, for president of European country?
Not only President of Poland expressed his condolences, also we had statements from the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the French, from the EU officials, including Josep Borrell, who also expressed his condolences and also received much criticism because of that. I think, there are two reasons mainly. First of all, it's because this is I mean, European countries are not in a state of war with Iran, and so they don't think that they are obliged to, I don't know, laugh at his death, or I don't know, or to express some kind of joy because of that. I mean, this is not political. This is not the kind of political tradition that we have in Europe. And so this was mostly a rule of good manners to express condolences over other leaders' death, especially in times when Iran, although a real problem for Western countries because of his regional foreign policy. But at the same time, European countries don't want to lose Iran, and they are still considering negotiations with this country and normalization of relations. Uh, which has been expressed clearly on several occasions since 2018, when the United States pulled out of the nuclear agreement with Iran, and the Europeans didn't agree with that. So the second reason will be a very pragmatic one. So most European countries, they are very pragmatic on Iran policy. They don't perceive Iran as some kind as an enemy, as a military enemy, as a military rival with whom they need to go to war into. So that's why their reaction was a little bit different than what we expected in Ukraine, which is understandable.
Yes, and in terms of how this death of the Iranian president affect on the country overall cost inside the country, will it be changed dramatically? Does Iran have any internal economics problem like in Syria had before the war?
I don't think we need to expect some fundamental changes. President of Iran, although being a conservative heavyweight in domestic policies, is a secondary political figure in the Iranian political system. So, as president of Iran, he was not head of state, and he was head of government, and all strategic decisions regarding both domestic and foreign policies are usually taken on the level of Rahbar, or the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. So Ibrahim Raisi was an important person in the political system, and a significant politician in the conservative establishment. But this doesn't. But again, his functionality was pretty much limited in the system, so not everything depended on him. And the Iranian political system is pretty much it's resilient enough to survive an abrupt replacement of head of their government. So they had this in past, and this is unlikely to cause major problems for Iran. Of course, I think that the snap presidential elections that are scheduled for 28th of June, they will be a stress for political system, because right now Iran has been experiencing for several years now. Iran has been experiencing a deep crisis, political crisis, regarding related to relations between the state and the public, mainly. Of course, fueled by social and economic grievances that they suffer because of sanctions, because of mismanagement, and other problems. And this is what makes the timing of the presidential elections really important and stressful for the system and for the elites. But I don't think that elections of the president will cause major troubles, or create an existential threat to the system. I would say that more importantly, everything will depend on whether there will be any changes in the near future on a very high level. So, because right now there are many rumors about Ali Khamenei being ready to name his successor. And Ibrahim Raisi was believed to be one of these, possible successors. Although recently his positions were weakened because he was unpopular. He didn't manage to address social and economic issues the way he was expected to. But nevertheless, he was one of primary successors to Ali Khamenei, and his death, of course, will fuel tensions in interdomestic tensions, and will most probably lead to a fresh round of internal power struggle between different persons that will want to replace him. Because right now the conservative establishment needs another compromise figure who will be possible successor to Ali Khamenei. And this is something that I think we should watch in the near future, because this will be the important event that will define the future of Iran's political system, not presidential elections. So I see two options for presidential elections in the end of June. First option, which is the most likeliest one, that the establishment will decide to place another conservative president instead of Raisi. So they will elect someone who is very similar to him, also from the conservative establishment, and he will just continue the course that was defined by Raisi administration. The second option is to allow liberal reformist candidates to run for elections in order to try to rethink and refresh relations between the state, part of the society, and the West. Because in 2021, when Ibrahim Raisi was elected, all liberal, reformist, non-conservative candidates, they were excluded from the elections. And this is what made the system really weak and unpopular, because right now conservatives dominate almost everywhere, in the parliament, in the government, in the assembly of experts, which had recently have had fresh elections. And so this may be an opportunity for the establishment to try to balance the system and allow liberal and moderate and reformist camp to participate in the elections. But right now, I don't think this is. I think it's less likely, because as of now, I see that they will most probably continue with the course they chose in 21. The elections will see another conservative president come to power, and that's it.
If they will able to organize the elections very fast, I suggest the decision will be made not by the ordinary people, by some kind of their parliament. Could you explain that? Who will?
No. I think the elections, the procedure of the elections is that the president of Iran is elected by the people. The problem is that, first of all, there are institutions that can exclude candidates if they think that they are not fit for the office. So basically, before the elections, the candidates which want to run for the president, they are being filtered through certain institutions and being chosen by them. And then people go and vote. So I would say that the problem with these elections will probably be the same as with the recent parliamentary elections. These elections will once again most likely be held with a very low turnout. And this is the problem for the system, is that they lost, this is their main problem, is that people in Iran, most of them at least, they live in a state of political apathy. So they just don't go to elections. That's it. So they don't vote. They don't believe in voting. They think that there are no candidates that represent their views and interests. And that is why I think that there is this option, this second option, to allow more candidates to join elections, because in this case, again, this will not change Iran's foreign policy fundamentally, but this may solve partially this problem of legitimacy by bringing more people in. For example, if they see that there are more candidates to their liking participating in the elections. But again, this is, I think that current conservative elites in Iran, they are very, they are moving along very, an inertial scenario. There is inertia in the political system where they think that it's best not to change things and let everything flow as it used to be during Raisi administration. That's why I think that this kind of thinking will dominate during elections.
Well, of course, I want to ask you about the situation with the weapon in terms of the weapon and drones and that Iran supplies to Russia in the war in Ukraine. Why has Iran become the world's leader of the drone production, if I'm not mistaken? And where do they get their components parts from?
Several reasons. First of all, they poured a lot of money in their military-industrial sector over the years. So this was their top priority. And it is safe to say that they were successful in developing their military and industrial complex. And drones were defined as a top priority for them because they knew that they couldn't win a war, a direct confrontation with the West, because the West is stronger than them. So that's why they needed, weapons that could deal maximum damage, but with little cost. And drones is a solution. Secondly, they were able to withstand the Western-led sanctions regime, to find a way to bypass sanctions and bring all parts that they needed to manufacture drones and other weapon systems. Not only so, partially their manufacturing is domestic. So basically, they managed to build their own manufacturing base in Iran. And second, but of course, partially they bring some components from other markets, regional ones, but mostly Western. So they just found a way to bring those Western components to Iran by passing sanctions. And thirdly, again, drones have become part of any modern warfare, and Iran, Turkey, the United States, so they were one among the first to understand this, to reflect on this, and as a result, to successfully integrate them into their activities, military and paramilitary activities. So I would say it's just, so basically the answer to your question is that Iran was just successful enough or wise enough, to properly find a solution, understand that this is a solution, and to just carry this out. So yeah, this is something that we should have done years ago, and because we had the potential, Ukraine as well, we had even more potential than Iran because we're not under sanctions. But yeah, I mean, this is one example when with little cost. And with what they had, they built pretty much a successful military-industrial complex, which cannot win wars with the United States, but it can deal enough damage to force rivals to negotiate with Iran. This is their goal, their ultimate goal.
Overall, I heard rumors that before the full-scale war, some people from Iran came to the Ukrainian authorities come up with idea with Shahed, and they say, "Oh, we don't need it." But then they started this project in Iran. I don't know, is it true or not? But
I don't know whether this is true or not. I haven't heard about it, but I mean, I would not be surprised if such a story is true, because there were many opportunities when we could pursue a joint project with any other country, non-Western country, Iran, India, Pakistan, because all these countries they always want new technologies, they want partners, they want manufacturing bases, which Ukraine has had and still have. I mean, we have factories that could produce many of the components that they use. And we just lost many opportunities. And Iran, by the way, was at some point, even before the war with Russia, before 2014, Iran has been one of pretty, I would say, significant potential partners for Ukraine. I mean, of course, when the sanctions were imposed on Iran, we couldn't pursue this opportunity because of the position of Western countries. But still, before, I mean, when, for example, the nuclear deal was signed in 2015, I think there were many opportunities potentially opening for Western countries, for Ukraine to, for joint project. But this is, I mean, there is no sense in talking about this now because this is something that could have been done, and if the circumstances were different.
And I wanted to ask you about how did Iran get into the Russian, or more precisely, Eurasian orbit, and how can it get out from it?
Their partnership with Russia relies, I think, lies on three factors. First of all, there was a decision inside Iran among elites that this is something that they need to do. And this is mostly the decision made by the conservative establishment, which is now dominating Iranian politics. So I think that if there is a change in the government structures, so if moderate reformers come back to power in Iran, this may change the nature of their partnership with Russia, because the moderates, they usually prefer normalization with the West and more balanced foreign policy than just over-reliance on Russia and China. Second factor is that Iran-Russia partnership was built upon the international momentum that has been shaping for some years now, even before the Russia's full-scale invasion to Ukraine in 22. So Iran sees itself as part of this coalition of non-Western countries that challenge the West and their domination of the world order. So they think that they need to solidarize themselves, to affiliate themselves with other non-Western countries like China, Russia, I don't know, India, Turkey, I mean, all other that have the same interest to end Western domination of the world order as they see it, and to move towards some kind of a more just, multipolar world order as they think is the most that reflects their interests. And this is something that Russia manipulated very much to their favor by saying that Iran should move closer with Russia because Russia, is the country that also is for this idea. So unless something changes in relations between the West and non-Western countries, I don't expect Iran change its course. So basically, they will still resent the West as long as non-Western countries will remain on this course to challenge the West and to change the international system. And the third factor is relations with the United States. So the Iran-US relations have become worse over the years, and the worse they become, the more likely Iran will remain Russia's partner. So this is simple as that. They see, I mean, as I understand this, the Iranian elites think that if the United States and their European allies don't want to deal with Iran, don't want to negotiate with it, then they have no other option as to move closer to China and Russia, which they did. So the more relations with the US becomes worse and more confrontational, the more Iran will move closer to Russia, will provide it with new weapons, maybe with ballistic missiles, and just to prove a point, just to weaken the United States positions as they see it. Because Iran, unfortunately for us, Iran and many other non-Western countries, they see war in Ukraine not only as war between Ukraine and Russia, but also as part of a global West and non-West struggle, which sometimes interprets as we need to support Russia in order to weaken American positions. So yeah, in this case, in this factor, something needs to change in the nature of the relationship between the West and Iran.
Yes, and what do you think about some kinds of the similar mentality or political system in Iran and Russia? For example, you said before, that have fatigue, political fatigue. They don't want to change regime, and others, Russian and Ukraine use religion like a tool. Of course, some of them Muslim, another Christian, but they use this religion question like a key factor in their politics too. What do you think about that?
I think they are very different in many aspects. The only similarity is that, I don't know, maybe is that you have a political system that is very competitive inside. You have many elite groups competing with each other, and you have the supreme leader, Putin or Ali Khamenei, as the arbiter or, mediating between them. But this is, this is the only similarity that I see. Ideologically, ideologically, they are different. The only thing that maybe that binds them together is that, yeah, they have similar shared resentment towards the West and the United States. That's it. But that's it. I mean, nothing more. Relations between Iran and some of the European countries are better than relations between Russia and Europe. And also, I would say that Iran and Russia are competitors in many fields. I mean, energy, military, agriculture in certain aspects, regional policies. So I would say that this is an uneasy alliance, and also many Iranians, they don't have a favorable view of Russia historically. So, and I would say that Iranian political system is more difficult and diverse than Russia's. And I think Russian political system is more solid than Iran. So Iran is more vulnerable, is more diverse. It has more problems in its economy than Russia, which may be a paradox, but still, they really have. And Iran is located in a more difficult regional environment than Russia. Russia is more comfortable in this case, in these terms. So yeah, I think they are different. I don't think we should compare them too much. I mean, there are certain similarities, but they are mostly, how do I say? They are mostly situational, So they are similarities. They are shared interests. They depend on the moment that they live now. So if something changes, they will get back to this competitive, uneasy partnership that they have had for years before the war, like in Syria, where they coexisted, but still they competed with each other.
Yes, and could you explain why Iran threatening the world with the nuclear capabilities, like Russia too? It is defense or attempt to make defense or to become the most important player in the Middle East?
They don't threaten the world because, unlike Russians, Iranians have never said something like, we are going to bomb Berlin or Paris. I have never heard something like that. So basically, I would say that they are even more cautious than the Russians in using the nuclear option, in using the so-called nuclear blackmail rhetoric. Well, part of the reason is that, of course, most likely they don't have nuclear weapon yet, and but they of course they aspire they want to acquire one. In my opinion, this is mostly a question of status and reputation. So they think that possession of nuclear weapons is the only way to effectively defend their national sovereignty from foreign powers. So that's it. This is the same way as North Koreans developed their nuclear programs, the same way at some time Iraqis, Libyans wanted nuclear weapons. It was the same ratio behind India and Pakistan's decisions to acquire nuclear weapons. So every time it's the same. It's not to bomb someone directly, immediately after acquiring nuclear weapons. It's mostly because of the status that it gives you. The nuclear possession of nuclear weapons gives you a status of an equal player to other great powers. And elites tend to think that by having nuclear weapons, they will deter potential rivals. They will keep them at bay and not allow them to meddle in their internal affairs. Now, this is a moment that we can. This is something that I think that there are many illusions here because possession of nuclear weapons doesn't give you immunity to any foreign interference, but still. So this is something that Iranians believe. They strongly believe that nuclear weapons will help them negotiate with the West on equal terms. This is what they want.
But as a result, countries with the nuclear status try to join together.
Not always, but yeah, this is something that, again, any country, when they acquire a nuclear weapon, they want to be accepted in the nuclear club. The way the North Koreans, they are now building their rhetoric around this idea that you need to, they want the West to abandon sanctions and accept them as equals to the nuclear club because they are, a nuclear country. Of course, this isn't happening, but still, this is how they think. And I think the Iranians will behave themselves the same way. So they will just, when they acquire nuclear weapons, they will most probably try to use it in order to pressure the West, to blackmail the West. And maybe we will hear some statements, but I think they will be more cautious ones, considering that Iranians are a little bit different from the Russians. But yeah, this is something that many nuclear countries do. Why countries do want nuclear weapons? In almost all cases, it's because of defensive, some defensive idea, that this will defend us. The same way why, for example, right now, Ukrainians are more active in discussions about, possessing, also acquiring nuclear weapons. We regret that we gave away our nuclear weapons in the 90s. Again, it's because we think that nuclear weapons will give us status that will help us defend our borders and our sovereignty. So here, there is no real difference between us, Iran, India, Pakistan, North Korea. We all think in security, in the securitization of our defense and defense of what we see as defense of our national sovereignty and territorial unity, because we feel threatened, in one way or another. Of course, with Iran, the Iranian case is more complicated because you have a region which is really which is very unstable and which has several other countries that will also acquire nuclear weapons if Iran has one. You have Israel, which most likely de facto has nuclear weapons. You have Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates that have nuclear ambitions. You have Turkey that have nuclear ambitions and nuclear infrastructure, and you have Egypt. So this is, I think, what most of international community is frightened about. So it's not, I don't think it's about Iran, that everyone is sure that Iran will bomb Israel, for example, the same day they acquire nuclear weapons. It's mostly because of the potential consequences. If Iran has nuclear weapons, everyone thinks that everyone else will want to have it, and you will have an uncontrollable nuclear arms race that no one wants.
Absolutely. And in the end, please tell about the relations between Iran and Israel from a historical point of view. For example, when did the relations become deteriorated, when they get worse? Because in some periods it will be more better than now.
I think, they've become worse in 1990s, in 2000. So when Iran started their nuclear program, this was the main point of dispute between Israel and Iran, because Israel felt threatened by Iran, that if they have nuclear weapons, they will use it against Israel. So this was the main problem between the two countries, fueled, of course, by the rhetoric of post-revolutionary Iranian elites, that frequently used Israel as in shaping the image of an enemy. They frequently used Israel as this kind of arch enemy that they had in the region, and so I would say that nuclear program was the starting point for Israel-Iran regional rivalry. Before that, I mean, before that, I think their relations they weren't good, but they were pragmatic enough. I mean, of course, when the Islamic Revolution happened in 1979, the relations broke between countries because, of course, the new revolutionary government in Iran, it saw Israel as an enemy. They stood on pro-Palestine positions, unlike Shah, the regime of the Shah. But still, I would say that this was not the point of no return for these relations. During the Iran-Iraq War, for example, of 1980, 1988, Israel was one of the primary exporters of arms to Iran during the war. So not having formal relations didn't prevent Israel from arming Iran against their rival, against Iraq, because Israel at the time, they saw Iraq as a greater threat to them than Iran. So yeah, I would say that, but I would say that nuclear program later, so even after the Iran-Iraq war in 2000s, this was like the peak of their struggle, of their rivalry, that is now more confrontational than ever. And of course, now it's also more complicated. It is complicated by the fact that in both Israel and Iran, you have political hawks, conservatives in the government who are very aggressive in their foreign policy, and they view each other, in a very let's say absolute terms, where they think of each other as arch enemies, and they don't want to compromise because they think that any agreements will be weakness. So yeah, this is also a factor that complicates things.